Hello accounts people, time to have a look at some indexes. So we'll have a look through creating an index, deflating index, inflating, and we'll do some predictions, and we'll move on to double indexes afterwards. So what we've got a series of years. We've got about 8 years, and we've got the price per unit, so we know what the actual price, what the cost was. So this could be somebody trying to work out as a part of a trade body's job, working out to tell people how well they've done. Now, without requiring any huge maths, 230 compared to 200, we know it's going up by 15%. Now, we're using 100 as our base year in 2014. Of course, in a question, you might only start part way through, so you won't see the 100. You've just got to guess that, but at least using the 100 for 2014 helps this make a little bit more sense, because we know this is going to be 1.5% up on last year. So let's have a look. If we take the base index and divide it by the price and then times it by 2015's price, that's how the index would have been created. Do one again. So still starts off with C4, although we could actually have used 2015. Now we're timesing it by E3. And no surprise, a 2% increase. If we put absolute references in, we're on a spreadsheet, why shouldn't we? I can just see what's happening. We're expecting a steady rise, of course, all the way up to the 15%. It is actually a steady rise. If it wasn't, if it went down, it would reflect it, and obviously on a spreadsheet we can do that. So we've created our index based on the prices as they actually were, which means we can compare current prices, what we're paying now, against historic prices, or we can turn historic prices into today's money, whichever is easiest to understand. They both tell us the same story. So let's deflate. So we're going to convert all the later years down to 2014, when the index stood at 110, so not the 100 that we used earlier, but the price was 175. So we're comparing all these numbers against 175. So generally we've worked to left to right because on a spreadsheet it's easier to copy formulas, and we're going to take the number and divide it by its own index, which is what happens most often. The first step of most index calculations is divide a number by its own index and then times it by the index of the base year or the year we're converting to, the 110. So 180 in 2015 is equivalent to 172.17 in 2014. So that's a good deal. Buyer's done a good job. In 2016, the again is 180, and the index has gone up, so this should be a better job. Times, we're still basing it on 2014, 167.80, which is what we're expecting. Same price, inflation had gone up. So if we put in, so the constant is the C8 here, we're moving along with the others. So we can see here though, although the buyer's done very well in 2016, the wheels started to come off in 2017. We got a new one in 2018, or purchasing manager. It says so in the question, and he hasn't done such a good job, so we are definitely not doing very well compared to 2014. We're paying quite a few pounds more per kilo or litre or whatever it is than we were, so obviously the new purchasing manager is not as good as the old one at haggling. So we can inflate, we can convert these prices into the 2020 equivalent, and then we'll worry about this year's afterwards. So again, take the price, divide it by its index, and times it by the index of the year we're converting to. So 500 spent in 2014 is equivalent to spending 564 today, or last year, not the 600. But we knew that because it's pretty much the same pattern, actually not doing very well. Again, times it by. Again, another good value. Let's put the dollar signs in. So the constant is now the I13. So again, we can see that the relative price that we're paying isn't doing so good. 2016 is a good year, and then after that, with a new buyer, leveled out a little bit because we've gone to whole pounds. Not doing such a good job, so it might be time for a new purchasing manager or a new purchasing team. So the other thing we use it for is to predict the prices for 2021. Now we could either use the last year or we could use the base year. So if we use the base year, so this will be based on 2014, we will take the cost from 2014, divide it by its index, and then times it by the predicted index for this year, 2021. So if we're basing our costs on 2014, we would expect to pay £204, which obviously is less than we paid for a few years. If we based it on last year's, so we're going to use I. We'd expect to pay 227, so gives us an idea. There's no absolute precise answer. We should be paying somewhere in between that amount of money. Depends whether we get a new purchasing manager or not and how good they are. So we can base the prediction on the last year, which obviously is the most current price, and therefore in some ways that's the most accurate. So that's a more reliable estimate, although in theory if we got better at negotiating we could go down to that price. So when we have a bit of an investigation we'll find out what's the best one. We can do the same here, so we can inflate, so we're using this one so it makes sense. So we paid 600 last year, which is divided by its index and then times it by the index for this year. Our best year though, what is the best we could possibly hope for? Well, the best is 2016 was good, wasn't it? So let's have a look at that one then. So what would that do for us? So this will give us our best possible outcome. So that's given us an idea where to work to and the sort of best we could possibly hope. So although it's quite a wide range, we need to find out why we did so badly. It might not be the purchasing manager, it might be the fact that we're really short of cash and we've got very slow at paying for goods and we've upset our suppliers so we're not getting the discounts anymore, or we're buying lower volumes. So although I'm taking the mickey out to the purchasing manager, if there wasn't any other reason, we need a new purchasing manager. So double indexes, so these, we're going to use receipts for this one, so actually money that's actually coming in. And what we know is that we've got sales volume, so we're actually selling slightly more every year. And we're getting a slightly better price for our goods or services than last year. The inflation, it's creeping up. And we know that in 2018, quarter 3, that's what our receipts were. So because we've got a double index, we need to get into a good pattern. Now it'd be very hard, or I'm sure I can predict that or prove that if we don't do it in the right order we get the wrong answer, but just get into good habits. We want to revert to base price. So what we want to do is to take, I'll type the formula in first, take B6, that's the £1,100,010, divide it by the sales price index, take the price out, then the volume, so that takes us back down to level. Then put in the quarter of interest's volume, and then put in the price. So if you get into that pattern, you won't have rounding errors on limited calculators. Obviously I'm on a spreadsheet, so I've got a lot more decimal places than any calculator has got. And it's just a logical revert, take off the price, take off the volume, put the volume back on, put the price on. No problems whatsoever, no room for errors. So let's put the formula in properly. So if that was our revenue receipts in that quarter, this is what our receipts should be for that quarter. We've managed to do that. So very similar pattern. It's still going to be B6 and then it's going to be times D3. Oops. 4. Going to cheat now. Just click there. Just type the equal sign in. Equals B6 divided by B6 divided. And you can see the expected's going up. Now the constants here, of course, the ones that aren't changing as we go along, of course, are now the B's. They're just staying the same. Can be worked out not using these as constants, just not recommended. Certainly a mathematician would get really upset. And if I would turn it into pounds to make a bit more sense. So we can see our receipts going up. Well, yes, we're selling more units and we're selling more. The price is going up as well. So now we need to work out, have we done as well? Well, best thing to do is to revert it to that quarter, just to see, are these figures that actually came in, how far off the mark are we? We can see obviously in cash terms that is lower than that, and that is lower than that, and lower than that, and then we've done okay. So we can see what's actually happening. But if we take, so this is essentially a deflation with double indexes. So we've taken the value, divided it by its own price index and its own volume index, times it by and then the price. I'll do the same trick. So there we are. Again, need to take off a few decimal places. So 1,105,000 is equivalent to £1,087,081 in there. So as we expect, we haven't done as well as predicted. We've done a little bit worse. Now if we want to copy the formula across, it go the same. Divide this by its own, and then its own, then back to the years, then work back upwards. So the constant now is actually just the B3 and the B4, because that's the one we're relating to. So we can see how well we've done. So the actual revenue was equivalent to 1,065,000, 35,000 short, give or take, 34, 35, 105,500 so we're 4,500 short. And then of course we know, put an obvious number in, we've suddenly done a lot better. So we know that in the Q3 in 2019 we rebounded and done a lot better. So actually maybe what we're not doing is allowing for Q4, Q1 and Q2 aren't such good quarters, because we've done okay once we've gone back to Q3, because there's a seasonal variation, which is another lesson on moving averages.